A few years ago, I made the regrettable decision to explore the deep web. I had come across some discussions on Reddit where people were sharing their bizarre encounters on the dark side of the internet. They mentioned something called Tor, a browser that allows access to the deep web, and I became curious about what I might find. So, against my better judgment, I downloaded Tor and started browsing. I found a link to something called the Hidden Wiki, which was essentially a directory of links to various deep websites. As I scrolled through the list, I was horrified by the number of links related to illegal activities, particularly child exploitation. I was determined to avoid anything like that, but the entire experience felt incredibly unsettling. One of the links I came across was labeled the Black Pages. The page was stark black, with ominous red and yellow links scattered across it. The red links seemed to lead to some of the more disturbing corners of the deep web. There was one labeled Personal Assassin and another called Dead Pets. I realized just how twisted and depraved this hidden part of the internet truly was. Despite my growing unease, I clicked on a yellow link that seemed less threatening. It took me to yet another page filled with more links. This time, I found one labeled Secret Society Chat. Intrigued and a bit reckless, I clicked on it. The page took an unusually long time to load, what felt like an eternity of staring at a blank white screen before it finally turned black, and a chat box appeared next to a blank video screen. At that moment, I should have clicked the back button and closed the browser, but I didn't. Instead, I typed a simple "Hey" into the chat box. Almost immediately, the black video screen flickered to life, and a person wearing a grotesque mask appeared, sitting in a dark room. My blood ran cold when I saw my own face pop up on the screen as well. My webcam had been activated without my permission, despite me always keeping it off. Panicking, I covered the camera with my thumb and tried to close the page, but the minimize and exit buttons had disappeared from the browser, and even my taskbar was gone. I tried hitting Ctrl-Alt-Delete, but nothing happened. Then a muffled, distorted voice came through my speakers. The person on the screen was speaking, using some kind of voice changer. The words they spoke sent chills down my spine. "I still see you, James." My heart dropped. How did they know my name? I started holding down the power button on my laptop, and it felt like an eternity before it finally shut off. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to put the experience out of my mind. I deleted the Tor browser from my computer and went on with my life, hoping that would be the end of it. But then, one day, my mom handed me a letter that had arrived in the mail. There was no return address on the envelope, and when I opened it, I found a single sheet of paper with 3 words scrawled across it in huge letters. "Do unsettling back." I felt sick to my stomach, my hands shaking as I crumpled up the paper and threw it away. I didn't report it to the police. I figured there was no point. Everything on Tor is supposed to be anonymous, and I doubted they could trace anything back to the sender. But to this day, I have no idea how they found my address or what might have happened if I had gone back online. My most terrifying experience on the deep web occurred when I stumbled upon a site called Human Experiments. I don't remember exactly how I found it, probably buried deep in some link archive page I had been exploring out of morbid curiosity. The homepage was horrifying in itself, describing the contents of the site in gruesome detail. The text was written in a red, blood-like font, claiming that the experiments showcased on the site were meant to prove that not all humans are created equal. The people chosen for these so-called experiments were usually homeless individuals or unlucky souls who happened to get caught by these twisted individuals. The site listed various types of experiments, including starvation, water deprivation, reactions to extreme pain and torture, exposure to infections and diseases, and even tests on infants and children involving x-rays, heat, and pain tolerance. I had seen some shocking videos before, like 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, so I thought I was prepared for whatever I might see. But I was wrong, so very wrong. The images I found on that site were beyond anything I could have imagined. They were of innocent people, people just like you and me, being subjected to unimaginable horrors. I felt physically ill, my stomach churning as I forced myself to scroll through the page, each image more grotesque than the last. Eventually, I reached a section dedicated to infants and toddlers. The sight of those tiny, innocent faces in such horrific conditions was almost too much to bear. My mind was screaming at me to close the browser, but my hands wouldn't move. I was paralyzed by the horror of it all. Just as I reached the bottom of the page, a small chat box popped up on my screen. For a moment, I didn't understand what it was, until a line of text appeared. "Did you enjoy the site?" My blood ran cold. I hesitated, then typed, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly, ignoring my question entirely. "What was your favorite part of the site?" I asked the same question again, my hands shaking as I typed. This time, the stranger answered, "I'm the site owner." I felt a surge of anger and disgust. I told him that what he was doing was sick and inhumane, and that I was going to report the site to the authorities. That was my biggest mistake. After a brief pause, the stranger replied, "I see your name is Michael, and you live in Massachusetts." My heart felt like it was about to explode. He was right. He knew who I was and where I lived. In a panic, I typed, "No, you're wrong." 10 seconds later, he responded with my full address, every detail correct. His final message was, "Have a nice day." I slammed my laptop shut, my heart racing, and immediately called the police. I told them everything, but without the link to the website, there was little they could do. The Tor browser doesn't save your browsing history, so I couldn't even help them locate the site. The police advised my family and me to find another place to stay, at least temporarily, until we could be sure we were safe. Luckily, my family had already been planning to move, so it didn't take long to sell the house and find a new place. But I couldn't shake the guilt of what I had put my parents through. I apologized to them every day for a month, but they were more concerned about our safety than anything else. We never did hear from that person again, and I hope to God we never will. There used to be a website on the deep web called the Silk Road. It was an underground marketplace where people could buy and sell illegal drugs, among other things. I had heard about it from some friends who used it to buy weed after our usual dealer moved out of state. They swore it was legit, so I decided to check it out for myself. My parents were out of town for the weekend, so it seemed like the perfect time to score some pot. I downloaded the Tor browser and found my way to the Silk Road. Sure enough, there were tons of listings for cannabis. I left a comment on one of the newer listings, asking if anyone could vouch for its legitimacy. About an hour later, I received a message from a user named Ild. He saw my comment and offered to sell me an ounce for a really low price, but only if we did the deal locally. I had done local deals before without any issues, so I wasn't too concerned. I told him I lived in Washington, and it turned out he was only about an hour away. I suggested meeting halfway, but to my surprise, he said he would come all the way to my town. I couldn't turn down such a convenient offer, so I agreed to meet him in the parking lot of a nearby Wendy's at 9 p.m. As the time drew closer, he started asking me some strange questions, like my address and who I lived with. I didn't want to give out too much information, so I lied and told him I lived alone. Then, just before the meeting, he texted me saying he found a better spot for the deal, behind an old, closed-down retail store at the edge of town. Every alarm bell in my head was going off, but I was desperate to get the weed, so I ignored my instincts and drove over to the spot. When I got there, the place was deserted. I parked my car behind the building and waited. A few minutes later, I received a text saying he was on his way, but something about it didn't sit right with me. If he lived an hour away, how could he know about this place? I waited for another 20 minutes, but he never showed up. I tried texting him again, but there was no response. That's when I decided it was time to leave. The whole situation fell off, and I didn't want to stick around to find out why. When I got home, something was wrong. The front door was open. I was sure I had closed it before I left, and my parents weren't supposed to be back yet. My heart was pounding as I parked the car in the driveway and cautiously entered the house. Upstairs, I noticed that the light in my parents' bedroom was on, and I heard a shuffling noise coming from inside. I called out, "Mom? Dad?" But there was no response, only the sound of the door slamming shut. Panic set in. My parents' car wasn't in the driveway, so there was no way they were home. That's when it hit me. Someone had broken in. Grabbing a carving knife from the kitchen, I bolted upstairs and practically kicked down the bedroom door. The room was empty, but my mom's jewelry case was open, and her valuables were gone. Before I could process what was happening, something grabbed my leg from under the bed. I didn't think, I just reacted. I stabbed downward with the knife, and the man under the bed let out a scream of agony. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand and called 911, but I could only give them my address before the man scrambled out from under the bed, blood dripping from his arm. He didn't even look at me. He just bolted for the front door and ran out of the house. I watched as he jumped into a black Honda Accord and sped off. I couldn't tell the police much more than that. I couldn't mention the Silk Road because using it was illegal, and I had no idea who the man was or how he found me. But I can only assume that somehow he hacked me and got my address. If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads.